there somebody in the administration that's in charge of selling this to the American people?
Kind of the tedious repetition of the obvious. Latest QDR continues the trend of the last 15 years. I have three concerns of strategic importance, and I wonder how they were reflected in the QDR. The first of these is the new Chinese anti-ship missile. Some of its capabilities are classified, but I think in the public domain it is known that it is a real game changer. You can't get within 1,200 miles of it. And we have essentially no assured defense against it. If it were on a ship, then we couldn't get within 1,200 miles of any ship. This is a real game changer. Is this reflected in the QDR? The second concern I have of strategic importance is electromagnetic pulse. This is the most asymmetric of all warfare potentials. A non-state actor who had a tramp steamer, a Scud missile, and any nuclear weapon detonated above the atmosphere could be devastating to our military or to our country. How is this reflected in the QDR? And the third is our deep strike heavy bombers. I noticed that the Chinese took out a satellite, and we can take out a missile with a missile. This new bomber will fly lower than a satellite and slower than a missile. And I know it will be stealthy, and its cross-sectional area will be very small, but radar is also becoming very much more capable, as are the missiles that might take out the plane. These three concerns, I wonder how they are reflected in the QDR.
I'll comment on two of them. On the deep strike heavy bomber, we do recommend an increase that the Air Force move forward with another deep strike, enhanced deep strike capability. In my opinion, we have such capability already in the B-2, and that the new program should be a follow-on to the B-2 and have the kind of stealth capabilities that the B-2 has. That's a unique capability that the United States has today, and one which would be very important to be incorporated in any new deep strike bomber. On the Chinese anti-ship capability, of course, the U.S. Navy is very much aware of that emerging capability and is, I think I would say, in simple and unclassified terms, has a serious program to try to deal with it. I'm not suggesting complacency in that area, but but I would suggest that it's not going to. It need not be a game changer if we have appropriate countermeasures. Steve, do you want to comment on any of those?
Just 2 points. I think this is a priority in the QDR. It is one of the 6 mission sets: deter, defeat aggression, and anti-access environments. It is the second of our 4 enduring interests: assured access to sea, airspace, and cyberspace. It is a function partly of hardware, but partly of tactics. And one of the things we pointed out in this, in our report, is the Navy and the Air Force are working on an air-sea battle concept on how they would deal with the challenges presented by exactly the kinds of systems you describe in anti-access environments, and we applaud this. It requires a hardware solution, but also a strategy and tactics solution. EMP we did not address. I don't recall it being particularly addressed in the QDR. It is an important area. I think it's something we paid attention to in the days of the Cold War and have stopped paying attention to now, and it is a shortfall and something that needs to be addressed.
Thank you. It's even more important now than it was during the Cold War, and thank you for your recognition of that.
There is little positive I can say, Mr. Chairman, about North Korea, the third major global proliferator whose incentive to engage in such behavior increases as its economy continues to decline. Missiles and WMD know-how are North Korean products for which there is a very real market. North Korea's sales of such products over the years have dramatically heightened the WMD threat in countries of key concern, such as Iran and Pakistan. Meanwhile, countries such as India, Pakistan, and Iran, that traditionally have been seen as technology customers, have now developed capabilities that they could export to others. Looking at the demand side, Mr. Chairman, let's focus first on nuclear programs. Last spring dramatically made clear that both India and Pakistan are well positioned to build significant nuclear arsenals. Meanwhile, Iran, too, seems to be pushing its program forward. With regard to North Korea, the agreed framework has frozen Pyongyang's ability to produce additional plutonium at Yongbyon, but we are deeply concerned that North Korea has a covert program. The key target for us to watch is the underground construction project at Kumchangni, which is large enough to house a plutonium production facility and perhaps a reprocessing plant as well. The missile story is no more encouraging. Indeed, we expect the high level of launch activity in 1998 to continue in 1999. Last year's activity included the first launches of the North Korean Tapadong-1, the Pakistani Gori, and the Iranian Shahab-3, the latter two based on North Korea's Nodong. With a range of 1,300 kilometers, the Nodong, Shahab-3, and Gori significantly alter the military equations in their respective regions. Each is probably capable of delivering weapons of mass destruction. In short, Mr. Chairman, theater-range missiles with increasing range pose an immediate and growing threat to U.S. interests, military forces, and allies, and the threat is increasing. This threat is here and now. More disturbing, Mr. Chairman, is that foreign missiles of increased range and military potential are under development. North Korea's three-stage Tapadong-1, launched last August, demonstrated technology that, with resolution of some very important technical issues, would give North Korea the ability to deliver a very small payload to intercontinental ranges, including parts of the United States, although not very accurately. Pyongyang is also working on another missile, the Tapadong-2. With two stages, the Tapadong-2, which has not yet been flight tested, would be able to deliver significantly larger payloads to mainland Alaska and the Hawaiian Islands, and smaller payloads to other parts of the United States. In other words, the lighter the payload, the greater the range. With a third stage like the one demonstrated last August on the Tapadong-1, this missile would be able to deliver large payloads to the rest of the United States. The proliferation implications of these missiles are obviously significant. Foreign assistance is a fundamental factor behind the growth of the missile threat. For example, the foreign assistance helped Iran save years in its development of the Shahab-3 missile, which is based on the North Korean Nodong, and as I noted earlier, includes substantial Russian assistance. Moreover, Iran will continue to seek longer-range missiles and seek foreign assistance in their development. If Iran follows a development timeline similar to that demonstrated with the Shahab-3, which included significant foreign assistance, it would take Iran many years to develop a 9,000 to 10,000 kilometer range ICBM capable of reaching the United States. But Iran could significantly shorten the acquisition time and warning time by purchasing key components or entire systems from potential sellers such as North Korea. Iraqi capabilities to develop missiles also continues to be of concern. Iraq was ahead of Iran before the Gulf War, and if sanctions were lifted, we would have to assume that Iraq would seek longer-range missiles. Against the backdrop of an increasing missile threat, Mr. Chairman, the proliferation of chemical and biological weapons takes on more alarming dimensions. At least 16 states, including those with missile programs mentioned earlier, currently have active CW programs, and perhaps a dozen are pursuing offensive BW programs. And a number of those programs are run by countries with a history of sponsoring terrorism. On terrorism, Mr. Chairman, I must be very frank with the committee in saying that Americans are increasingly the favored targets. U.S. citizens and facilities suffered more than 35% of the total number of international terrorist attacks in 1998. This is up from 30% in 1997 and 25% in 1996. Looking out over the next year, Mr. Chairman, let me mention two very specific concerns. First, there is not the slightest doubt that Osama bin Laden his worldwide allies, and his sympathizers are planning further attacks against us. Despite progress against his networks, bin Laden's organization has contacts virtually worldwide, including in the United States, and he has stated unequivocally that all Americans are targets. Bin Laden's overreaching aim is to get the United States out of the Persian Gulf, but he will strike wherever in the world he thinks we are vulnerable. We are anticipating bombing attempts with conventional explosives, but his operatives are also capable of kidnappings and assassinations. We have noted recent activity similar to what occurred prior to the African embassy bombings, Mr. Chairman, and I must tell you that we are concerned that one or more of bin Laden's attacks could occur at any time.
And on that point, Mr. Tennant, the administration recently announced a program for the threats here and home in the domestic USA. This committee will be looking into the recommendations, which I hope will be forthcoming from the administration. I presume that you and your department worked on the formulation of that very important initiative by the administration.
Yes, sir, we had input into it.
And when you say strikes, those strikes could be at home as well as abroad.
Yes, sir. One of my greatest concerns, Mr. Chairman, is the serious prospect that bin Laden or another terrorist might use chemical or biological weapons. Bin Laden's organization is just one of a dozen terrorist groups that have expressed an interest in or have sought chemical, biological, radiological, or nuclear agents. Bin Laden, for example, has called on the acquisition of these weapons as, quote, a religious duty, and noted that, quote, how we use them is up to us. Earlier, I referred to state sponsorship of terrorism, so let me take this opportunity to say with respect to Iran that we have yet to see any significant reduction in Iran's support for terrorism. President HADLEY took office in August of 1997, but hardliners such as the Supreme Leader continue to view terrorism as a legitimate tool of Iranian policy, and they still control the institutions that can implement it.